Hey everyone, I want to make this video to clearly tell you my story and what's happened in my past. I'm gonna share a lot of different personal information just to give you like a clear understanding on why I am following Jesus and what's happened in my life and where I am today. So I grew up in Iowa and I just was really focused on my own personal success or achievement. So worked really hard, had a great family, ended up going to West Point while I was there, just pursuing after, different avenues for success. And I just kind of got to a cycle where I just got to a weird phase where I realized just what I was pursuing or what I was going after wouldn't bring me what I was looking for. I realized that in this endless cycle. But second semester of my sophomore year, me and a really good friend were rooming together. And then there was a guy in our company who just couldn't find a roommate. He just didn't get along with people. And so they thought we could get along with him. So they put him into our room. And I was definitely immature and we did not get along. We got in a lot of arguments and some physical altercations even. And we really, in the end, hated each other. So the next year, this guy that I didn't get along with, he was in a lot of trouble. He had a lot of honor boards, frat board, alcohol board. So different things at the academy that would have him get kicked out. And he'd have to pay back financially for the education, which was really expensive. So he's in a low spot. And man, I did not treat him well at all. I know that. And you reap what you sow, right? So he then, in a state of despair, put up a false accusation for me on something I didn't do, and I had to get a lawyer. And apparently in the military, this type of legal accusation, before I talked with my lawyer, and they said, before they did not give enough say to the accuser in this situation, in these things, and so the legal system, with the best intentions, they tried to equal things out, but the pendulum swings, and so it went too far the other way. And I remember pretty clearly when I was sitting talking with my lawyer, and I asked him, okay, this is a joke, this didn't happen, so this is going to breeze over, right? And they sat there and said, we need to be pretty careful and think through our actions and what's going to happen. It might be an uphill battle, but we're going to do everything we can so you don't get 20 years in prison. And I remember that just slapped me. That was totally unexpected. And but what I did was I thought, this isn't set in stone. I'm just going to pursue other things in my life, and I'm going to try to outrun this. I try to keep it something behind me. So I actually just made my schedule even more busy, where I'd wake up early, 5 a.m. to go work out. I began to tutor 14 of my friends during that semester or something. I was heavily involved in the clubs. I made it so I didn't sit down for more than a minute, so that I could outrun this fear of, 20 years, and I actually did a pretty decent job, just burning myself out, running myself into the ground. But 4 months later, over winter break, I was at home and I stepped up onto a ledge, waist high, with my little sister, and my knee just shifted, and I was locked. I couldn't move my leg, and so I went back to West Point. Had to get a MRI, and they said that my meniscus was a bucket handle tear. So it was this tear that flipped the meniscus into the joint. Anyway, my doctor came out and told me, he's this is not common. It doesn't happen. You don't get this type of tear without tearing your other ligaments. I haven't seen this before, but we'll just fix you up. So I almost see it as God, in hindsight, that guy was just said stop running. Here, understand where you are. And so I ended up getting surgery Friday night. In that weekend, I had huge plans. There's plans. This 500th night weekend, it was going to be this big ball. All my friends were going out. It was going to be so much fun. I had a date coming in. I was just really excited for it. And then I had to get surgery. And I went back to my room. And there was no one. My roommate wasn't there. There's no one else on my floor. And I remember laying there, my injury, just laying on my couch, and this fear of this 20 years began to catch me, and I began to think and turn into reality that from the age of 21 to 41, I was going to be in prison. That everything I worked for, all these things I tried to accomplish, like I wasn't going to be at like ground zero. I was going to be below that. I was never going to have a family. I was never going to live a career. Never going to have friends. My life in societal terms was over. And I remember laying down on my bed and just like staring at the wall for hours. And like my eyes were open, but I just didn't see anything. It was just dark. And I just had this like pressure on me, just thinking that like, man, like I don't even want to live anymore. I don't know. And the thing, I didn't really tell my parents the situation too. And I was thinking like, man, how embarrassed would they be when people asked them like, oh, how's your son doing? They're like, oh, he's in prison. You know? Anyway, just all these things were really catching up to me, and I was in a pretty low spot. Yeah, a lot of fear and depression, anxiety, just anger. The crazy thing is that whole weekend I didn't really eat anything just because I was laying there allowing this feeling to just grow in me. And then finally, the weekend ended, people were coming back, so I decided to go get some food. And I tell you, the sovereignty of God, His timing, it's incredible. I didn't even make it back to my room. While I was walking back, two of my friends stopped and asked to pray for me. And they didn't know my situation that was going on. They just saw I was injured. And they shared the gospel with me. It's two of my classmates, Isaac and Nick, and then my mentor now, who's Austin, was there. And they shared the story of how Jesus had changed their life and how they were lost and broken before, but now they're like complete and have life in Him. And I remember hearing their testimonies and hearing the gospel too. They presented to me. And I didn't believe it right away, but I definitely wanted to, because I felt like I didn't have anything. Like if this was real, this was like the only thing I could have, you know? And so one of the guys, Nick, he said, hey man, I know you're not really interested in this right now, but do you want to read the Bible with me? And I agreed to do that. So I'd read a chapter of Mark at night, and then we'd talk about it the next morning. And I remember over those few days as I was reading, it was just like crazy. The things I was reading, like these miracles and things, like, yeah, not real. I don't know. I was like asking him, do you actually believe this? But over time, God really began to work on my heart. And I remember too, sometimes I would be laying on my bed, and just when people walk by the door, I don't know, I just like created this lie in my mind and this fear that would just like grip me. When people like walk by the door, I thought it was like the officials coming to get me, you know, like taking me to prison. And I would just lay there and someone walked by the door. My heart would just like race so much, and I would like sweat and just like, I couldn't fall asleep at night. And I remember one night specifically, there was just a bunch of people going by the door, and I was like sweating in my bed, just like laying there. And I remember just like kind of being done and fed up. And I said, all right, Jesus, if you're real, then take this fear I have away from me. And all of a sudden, like, I was just like at peace. It was like so much peace. It was weird. I sat up and I was like, wait, what? I was a little confused by it because the fear just completely left me. But then I just, I don't know, decided to go back to bed and dismiss it. And that happened another time as well. But as I began to read, my question with Nick was like, do you believe this too? Can you believe this? You know, I almost saw my heart start to soften. And one night I was in my room, and this was the first time I really felt like God speak to me. And I was reading Mark chapter 8, verse 35. And it said, for whoever would save his life will lose it. And I remember thinking there like, well, my life's already over, you know, what's next? And it said, for whoever will lose his life for my sake in the gospel will keep it. And then it said, for what would it profit a man to gain the whole world, yet forfeit his soul? For what can a man give in return for his soul? And that, like, when I read that, I really felt like God almost saying, you know, you very well might be going to prison for 20 years. But if you go to prison for 20 years and you know me, you will have more than if you live the most successful life you could ever imagine. that if you graduated from here and you achieved more than you ever wanted, like more than your wildest dreams, to the point where you literally were the most like wealthy and established man in the entire world, you would be at a loss in comparison if you were in prison with me, because I'm more than anything this world could ever give you. That really like hit me. I was like pretty blown away by that, but it really touched my heart, and I decided that I wanted Jesus. And it's really interesting. That night, like, my situation, my surrounding didn't change right away. But I was from the point where I was the most, like, angry and depressed and frustrated and full of fear than I've ever been in my entire life. In that moment, like, when I decided, like, I want you, God, and I made Jesus the king of my life, I had, like, this joy and this peace. Yeah, that was just so I never had before. It was weird. Like, in the situation where I had more peace than I've ever had in my entire life. I had more joy, more fulfillment than I've ever had in my entire life. And I remember I went outside. I don't know if it was that night or a night later, the next night. But I remember it was past taps. I wasn't supposed to be outside, but I went outside, and it was night out. And I looked at the trees. I was just outside, I don't know, and I could just like feel, and I knew that God was real, like, and I knew that I was saved and I was with Him, and I just was like so pumped and so excited, like couldn't hold in like some yells almost, and man, and I began to tell people about my situation then, about like what I was going through, the potential of the 20 years, and after I told people that story, they would always look at me and think, how are you the only person in this room smiling? How are you the happiest person in here? And I tell them, I'll tell you why, Christ just changed my life. And I know just since then, like the reality of Him, where I was just so broken, I thought my life was over, and I ended up just receiving life in that point. In the time where I thought my life was over and I had nothing, I gained life, and I gained everything. And the amazing thing is that's like for everyone. I don't know who's watching this video. It could be, someone who's following Christ and this is just encouraging, or someone who doesn't know Christ and maybe is waiting for that. I encourage you not to wait. But anyway, my life changed during that point, and I began to grow closer to the Lord while I was at the academy, and the Lord did an incredible thing. It was like 3 weeks later, I remember praying and saying, God, I really believe you to be real, and that if I surrender everything to you, that you'll lead me down the path you want me to walk. And I said, if you want me to go to prison for 20 years, I will go. And later that day, I got an email, case dropped. The legal case dropped. It went down to a misconduct board that was within the academy. And so, like, I don't know, it's just crazy. And there's like a lot of other things that happened where God ended up just pulling me out of West Point. After completing 3 years, no financial requirement, no military service like obligation, He ended up pulling me out. And it was part of His plan to where I am now. But I ended up going home at the end of that semester. This occurred, I gave my life to Christ in January of 2018. I ended up going home, and throughout that entire year, the final 8 months of that year, or 7 months, I kind of fell off the grid. I didn't have really much fellowship at home, but then God pulled me back in January of 2019, and I've really been following the Lord since then. It's just been awesome and life-giving. But how I met Ben. I'm sure you've seen a lot of posts online about what's going on in Kenya, a lot of things detailing just like the movement that's growing in this place called Kitale, Kenya, which is close to Uganda. So I ended up going to Kenya in November of 2019, last year. And the reason I went is quite interesting, a series of dreams and a guy from Kenya that I met in the U.S. But I ended up flying to Kenya by myself and picked up by locals, people I hadn't met before. And one of those guys was Ben. And my first 2 weeks that I was there, they just asked me to speak at all the churches that were in the different regions. And Ben wasn't following the Lord at this time, but he was there for every sermon or speech I gave. And it was really interesting. People that were watching, in the crowd, they were encouraged. They were nodding, But Ben, every time I looked over at Ben, he was just totally engaged, totally watching, and he sometimes just had like tears in his eyes. And I could see that God was working in his heart. And he tells me now that was the time frame in which he gave his life to Christ and really made him king of his life, was in November of 2019. And so Ben and I stayed in touch. When I came back to the States, we talked once a week. He asked me to be his mentor, and he was growing. It was really cool to see. And he was a teacher sharing with his students. I ended up going back to Kenya in March of this year, 2020. While I was there, I was only there for 2 weeks. I planned to be there for like 6 months, but the virus ended up kicking me out. So I was only there for 2 weeks. And while I was there, Ben was exposed to different trainings on really what it looked like, the vision of making disciples and the easy structure of simple churches like home churches, and seeing that multiplication of disciples making disciples into a movement that reaches hundreds and thousands and millions at times. And so he began to understand it all and grew during those 2 weeks. And he ended up going back to Kitale, where he grew up, in April of 2020, 3 months ago. Since then, Ben and I have stayed in touch. We probably talk about 3 times a week. And he has just been faithfully serving the Lord. And a movement has begun in the past 3 months where Ben is like the most humble and loving guy I've ever met. It is just incredible. Every time I talk with him, I feel like I learn just so much from him about what it really means to love others and be humble and serving the Lord. And so he has just been really influential. God has worked through him so much. And just in the past 3 months, there are already like 50 churches, and over 250 people have been baptized. It's not Ben. It's Ben pouring into a few people and raising them up as leaders and helping them to teach others how to be disciples and make disciples. And that multiplies and grows. After 1 month, there was about 20-some people who were baptized. After 2, there was close to 100. And now there's over 250. It's exponential. It's growing. And right now, this movement phase where it is, there's like 50 to 70 leaders right now in the movement, people who are leading home churches. And so we have a group of guys going, me along with 4 other people, and we are heading down to Kitale, Kenya in 10 days. We will be there for 1 week. We're going to hold a 5-day training for all of these 70 leaders. Right now, it is a crucial time period that can be really effective in seeing this movement expand and grow. We're going to pour deeply into these leaders specifically to help them grow in their relationship with God and understand how to be leaders in a movement and see the movement continue on and grow and spread to where it's reaching thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and even millions across East Africa. We're seeing this exponential growth. It is totally possible. And I believe that it'll happen. And this training is going to be really, really important and effective, I believe. So I'm super excited for it. Right now, we're trying to raise support in 2 ways: prayer support and then also financial support if anyone wants to give and help with this training. But there's a link attached to that. But the biggest thing I want this video to do is to encourage all of you. My life totally changed. In fact, I had no life before, and now I have life in Christ. And everything has changed. I can't describe it. I've received more than the world, and Ben has too. And you, if you know Christ, you have a message that will change someone's life. There are people like me, or where I was broken before, who need to hear it from you. And if you want to know how to share the gospel, you can reach out to me. And I would love to talk you through that, or how to make disciples and seeing a movement happen anywhere. It can happen anywhere. I gave my life to Christ because those guys were meeting in a movement through West Point that spread through West Point. This movement now started in Kitale, Kenya. God used me for that. And all of us, man, God can use us if we are willing and if we just say yes and are humble in that and follow his guidance. But every person in this movement in Africa, over 250 people in just these past 3 months, they all individually have received more than the world could ever give them. Their lives have completely changed. And we're hoping to see this continue on. And so I really want to extend a hand and ask if you'd like to join not just this movement in Africa, but seeing the gospel spread through movements over the whole world, in your area where you are, or whatever country you have a heart for. People who don't know God are they're lost. They don't know life. And we have the message of life that can just bring them joy and fulfillment and happiness, not just now for the rest of their life, but for all eternity. And it's part of God's plan that he uses us. And it's our choice on what we want to do. So I hope this encourages you. And really want to invite you to be part of what God is doing. And I'm just so thankful to be a part of it. It is such a joy. God bless y'all.